There are only days left for lawmakers to come up with yet another set of district maps. What this delay could mean for the May primary election and your vote.
I'm moving on, but I won't stop standing up for what I believe in.
U.S. Representative Joyce Beatty opens up about the incident at the subway train with another member of the House of Representatives, why she says his apology was not good enough. And a push for change years in the making. The Reagan Tokes Act passes the Ohio House. We look at the next hurdle for that piece of legislation. Thank you so much for joining us for Face the State. I'm Tracy Townsend. Once again, the clock is ticking when it comes to drawing up the new district maps. And now the May primary is in jeopardy. This comes after the Ohio Supreme Court rejected the redistricting maps for a second time. Members of the Ohio Redistricting Commission now have until next Thursday to find a map that will win the court's approval. By law, the maps must be redrawn every 10 years based on U.S. Census data. As 10 TV's Kevin Landers explains, reaching a compromise is proving difficult.
To borrow an analogy from the game of football, the Ohio Supreme Court is like the head referee in the political game called congressional redistricting, and it won't stop throwing a flag on the field for a foul.
Is a football that's been tossed in the air, and there are all kinds of people, both receivers, I guess, to carry the analogy forward, both receivers and defensive backs, and maybe linebackers who are going after the ball.
On one side of the field, you have Republicans, and on the other side, Democrats, each one attempting to draw up a play that will deliver congressional districts that are fair.
How do you define what is a likely Republican district versus what is a likely Democratic district?
Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose is like the commissioner of the league, except he's also a player because he sits on the redistricting commission. His job is to deliver a May 3rd primary, but without the congressional districts, the football, that can't happen.
The longer that we go without having finality on these maps, the more likely that things could go wrong.
Is it possible that we could have a June primary if you don't get the information in time to conduct the May primary?
I'm not going to make predictions about when the election is going to be held. I can tell you right now what the law says is that it's my duty to conduct the election on May 3rd.
Here's how the congressional maps look now. It gives Republicans a 57-42 advantage in the House and a 20-13 advantage in the Senate. But the Ohio Supreme Court says that's not good enough.
It looks to me like the Supreme Court is saying what is fair is probably a 54-46 division.
I've not seen a set of district lines that can get below 57 Republican seats and still don't commit other violations of the Constitution.
So where does that leave voters? For now, they don't know who to vote for until the Ohio Supreme Court approves a congressional map. The court has asked for another revision by February 17th. If that doesn't work, the clock on this political football game continues to run. Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
Now, to give you an idea of why the May primary date could be in jeopardy, Secretary of State LaRose tells us that it takes 90 days between filing day and election day, and that deadline is already passed. Plus, early voting is supposed to take 28 days before the election. We also talked about the state Supreme Court's ruling with OSU professor Richard Gunther. He helped write the amendment in 2015 that outlaws gerrymandering. Here's what he thinks of the latest maps.
And what we saw with regard to both of the maps that were presented by the Republicans is something that is way off. In fact, there was a new trick that was included in the most recent gerrymander. It did, in fact, bring down from 62 to 57 the number of districts, quote, favoring the Republican Party. But it also created a situation in which all of the new districts tending towards the Democrats would be those that were in favor of Democratic voters, candidates in the past by less than 1%, which means a 1% swing would have shifted something like a dozen seats, bringing the Republican majority up to 71 out of 99. And if there were a 2% shift in the direction of the Democrats, it still would not pick up any seats for the Republicans. And this notion of symmetry, as it's called in the gerrymandering studies literature, is clearly violated here. And this is an unfair map without any doubt. And I'm pleased to see that the court wants to defend the Ohio Constitution as it was amended by 70% of Ohio's voters.
So we will keep you updated every step of the way as the commission meets to draw the new maps. Download the 10 TV app and you can stay up to date as well. A campaign ad you may have already seen running right here in Central Ohio claims Dr. Anthony Fauci can be fired by members of Congress. Is this true? To verify, 10 TV's Lindsay Mills took this recent viewer question to the experts.
That's why I'm endorsing Mike Gibbons for Senate. I'm Rand Paul. I know Mike Gibbons will join me in demanding that Fauci is immediately fired and removed from office.
This is the latest campaign ad released for Senate candidate Mike Gibbons. It features Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who has been vocal in the call to lift COVID-19 health mandates. Viewer Dean Taylor saw the ad and asked our Verify team, can members of Congress in fact fire someone in a cabinet position?
To verify if Dr. Fauci can be fired, our sources are two local political science experts, Paul Beck from The Ohio State University and Brianna Mack from Ohio Wesleyan University.
They really cannot. He is in the executive branch.
Dr. Fauci is a longstanding director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and President Biden chose him to serve as chief medical advisor.
Now, what Congress could do is they could pass a bill to bring that particular institute under confirmation by the Senate. So the next time that it appointed somebody as its director, that person would have to be confirmed by the Senate. They can't do it retroactively.
Fauci's not necessarily a member of the cabinet per se, right? He's in a position that was actually created by President Trump and remained vacant until Biden decided to bring it back in with his administration. The only way that they can be quote unquote fired is if they are impeached.
We can verify. No, members of Congress cannot fire Dr. Fauci. Have something you'd like us to verify? Send us an email to verify@10tv.com. With your Verify, I'm Lindsay Mills.
Congresswoman Joyce Beatty is speaking out as she says another member of Congress poked her. Beatty says while she was boarding the congressional train on Tuesday, she asked Kentucky Representative Harold Rogers to put on his mask, which is required on the tram. She says in response, Rogers poked her in the back, and when she asked him not to touch her, he used an obscenity. Rogers released a statement saying that he met with Beatty to personally apologize and express his regret. Beatty says she had to demand that apology.
I had gone to our leadership. I had also gone to the sergeant at arms, and I said, I'm demanding an apology. And so he did not come forth at first, and our leadership, Leader Steny Hoyer, went over and talked with some of his colleagues and their leadership and him, and they said he would come over and apologize. And so when he came to the floor to apologize, mind you, without a mask on, I stepped back. And as he reached out to touch my arm, I told him, don't touch me. And I moved back because he didn't have a mask on. And so with that, he mumbled some words. And I told leadership it wasn't acceptable. I wanted a public apology. And as Speaker Pelosi said, if you insult a high profile, you have to do a high profile apology. So I demanded a public apology, and that is when he publicly apologized. And I have accepted his public apology, and I'm moving on. But I won't stop standing up for what I believe in. And if you ride the train, then the message is you put a mask on or you walk.
The Congressional Black Caucus is demanding Rogers face consequences for his actions. All eyes are on Russia and Ukraine right now, this as the rest of the world is working to put an end to the conflict. Ohio Senator Rob Portman suggests taking a bipartisan route to counter Russia's aggression toward Ukraine. Here's his plan to halt the chaos going on overseas.
My hope is that Congress can come together and speak with one voice, Republicans and Democrats alike, pass bipartisan sanctions and legislation, and an aid package that sends a strong message of support to the Ukrainian people, a message that we stand with them in their fight for freedom, but also sends a strong message to Russia that if they choose to invade further, the armed conflict will carry a heavy cost The sanctions will be devastating. And finally, legislation that sends a strong message to the world that the United States stands with its allies in Eastern Europe and throughout freedom-loving countries across the world. The time to speak is now, with one voice. The world is listening and watching.
This week, the Consumer Price Index showed that prices climbed 7.5% in January compared to the previous year. That's the biggest jump in 40 years. Here's what Senator Sherrod Brown says needs to be done to fight inflation.
First thing we need to do is confirm 5 members of the Federal Reserve to make sure that all the Federal Reserve is in place. That hasn't happened in a decade. That's the first thing. Second, we need to go after those corporations, shipping companies, institutional investors in housing who have used this pandemic to fatten their profits. And there are thousands of cases of companies making much bigger profits than before the pandemic, using the pandemic and using our stumbles over the last 3 years as a country, using them to enrich themselves. And that means, in some cases, public embarrassment. In other cases, it just means standing up, using whatever antitrust tools the government has to make sure that these companies play fair. I know that some will just say, well, it's government spending that caused inflation. The fact is, this is the fastest growing economy we've seen in 20 years. Our economy's grown faster than China's for the first time in 20 years. Millions of jobs were created because of the Recovery Act and this leadership with a new president, new Senate. But we've got to deal with inflation better than we have.
The Reagan Tokes Act passed a big hurdle this week. Up next, hear from her mother as she reflects on the legislation named for her daughter that's years in the making. This week, the Ohio House passed the Reagan Tokes Act. It happened 5 years to the day since the murder of the OSU student. House Bill 166 now moves on to the Senate. Her mother says lawmakers' actions are long overdue. Lisa Tokes spoke exclusively with Chief Investigative Reporter Bennett Haverly.
Reagan Tokes' murder was a test of perception versus reality. The perception that if a convicted sex offender like Brian Goldsby were released from prison homeless and assigned a GPS ankle monitor, that someone, somewhere, would monitor his activities, would know if he were committing a string of robberies. The perception that the state's parole authority would follow its own policies and put safeguards in place that would alert someone if someone like Goldsby did something wrong. The reality, that didn't happen.
There are a lot of systemic failures that have to happen in order for this crime to occur.
Representative Kristen Boggs reminded lawmakers of that Wednesday before the House voted unanimously to approve House Bill 166, known as the Reagan Tokes Act. While a portion of the bill dealing with criminal sentencing already became law, this bill would beef up how ex-prisoners are monitored while reducing the burden of heavy caseloads on parole officers. It would also require that if someone like Goldsby was assigned a GPS ankle monitor, that there are boundaries in place, detailing where they can go and not go. A landscape that wasn't a reality when Goldsby kidnapped, raped, and later shot Reagan 5 years ago.
It's so hard. I wish I was never put in the position to have to fight for something like this. But sitting back and doing nothing was not an option. Making a difference in this world to help other people from a tragedy still is the best course of action.
We spoke to Reagan's mother, Lisa McCrary Tokes, from her Florida home hours after the House voted to advance the bill. She told me it's been frustrating watching the bill fail in past sessions, but she has renewed purpose.
It doesn't erase and it doesn't take away our pain and it doesn't take away anything that we've lost, but it does help others. And that is something that Reagan was so much about. So that is where I say I think she really would be proud and happy that we have continued to see this through and stick with it.
Reagan's death was not a one-off, but as we learned, it was part of a systemic pattern of women who had been killed by men under the watch of the state's adult parole authority. What's more, in Reagan's case, the failure to place guardrails on Goldsby's GPS appears to have violated the APA's own policy from 2016, the same year Goldsby was released. which states that the APA shall submit curfews and inclusion or exclusion zones within the first week of a release.
You know, you really helped uncover some of the brokenness and flaws that got our attention from the get-go to make us want to take action and not sit back and say, okay, this is okay, and I guess we just have to accept it. So thank you for your role in all of that.
Lisa says she's hopeful that the bill created out of something tragic will advance and spark positive change.
Continuing to shine light on the flaws and pushing for that. Unfortunately, it's been our torch to carry, but if it makes a difference and saves lives, we'll continue to carry that torch.
Bennett Haberly, 10 Investigates.
The union representing parole officers says they support the efforts, but argue the bill doesn't go far enough. They'd like to see more officers hired and real-time GPS added to the bill. 10 Investigates has been on top of this story from the beginning, playing a vital part in getting the bill passed. You can go back and see all of the coverage at 10tv.com/10investigates. This week, the Franklin County Commissioners approved a plan to roll out body cameras for the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. The resolution includes a $2.5 million contract for body cameras and video storage supplied by WatchGuard Video Incorporated.
But it's very vital. We all recognize the importance of having these body cameras for transparency for the Sheriff's Office, to make sure that the community has faith in the deputies and what takes place.
We know that the national discourse is that there isn't a lot of trust between members of the community and law enforcement. And so this is one step forward to help build that.
Recently, the governor's office announced $4.7 million in grants for body cameras. Franklin County Sheriff's Office is expected to get the most money, more than $232,000. Grove City and Hilliard are both set to get more than $58,000. The new retirement incentive program for Columbus police officers is moving forward. As 10 TV's Lacey Crisp reports, hundreds of officers applied. She looks at how you could be impacted.
More than 200 members applied for the retirement incentive program at a time when the department is already understaffed.
The public should be concerned.
During contract negotiations with the Fraternal Order of Police, the city offered a retirement incentive program to Columbus police officers, an option for 100 members to receive a one-time $200,000 buyout to leave the department. The program is offered to commanders on down through the ranks. Last year, 140 officers left the department. 50 officers were hired.
The division is going to have to do something. We are already down several hundred officers, without question. Losing another 100 of tenured people and potentially supervisors that are tenured around here how to run this place.
Columbus Mayor Andrew Ginther said in a statement, "We're pleased with the response to the retirement incentive program and expect the impact will be positive for both our officers and the residents of Columbus. The incentive is but one strategy intended to better position the Division of Police for the future." Ginther has proposed an additional Columbus Police Academy class, but the amount of applicants has dwindled through the years. There were more than 2,600 applicants for the Columbus Police Academy in 2016 and 625 last year. Farrell argues adding just one class won't be enough to make up for the numbers that are leaving. He worries officers won't be able to get to you as quickly as they have in the past.
But there are certainly things we may not be doing anymore. Services to the public that we've done in the past that we may not investigate or we may not come out and respond to just from a simple number standpoint.
And the 100 members who are selected for the program will have staggered retirements this summer. In Columbus, Lacey Crisp, 10 TV News.
Here's a breakdown by ranks of those who applied for the buyout program. 5 commanders, 11 lieutenants, 31 sergeants, and 175 police officers. That includes FOP President Keith Farrell, who you just heard from in the story. We'll continue to follow this process as it moves forward. The Ohio Domestic Violence Network has some concerns about a new bill. House Bill 508 aims to make sure parental custody of children is equal during separations. But Michaela Deming of the ODVN says that makes it harder to protect kids.
The bill actually says that every single custody case has to have a 50-50 parenting time and a 50-50 decision-making split in every single case, unless you can meet a clear and convincing evidence standard that it would be detrimental to the child.
And Deming says that's harder to prove, which could lead to more children being stuck with the abuser. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. Rumpke Recycling is planning on building a new $50 million center in Columbus, what the lieutenant governor says this change will bring to the area. Rumpke Waste and Recycling is investing $50 million into a new Columbus facility. It's going to be called the Rumpke Recycling Resource Center. The facility will be the 5th largest recycling center in North America. Lieutenant Governor John Husted says the addition will bring needed innovation to the capital city.
So why do I, as Lieutenant Governor, take interest in this project? I will tell you 3 main reasons. One of them is built around innovation, the fact that I lead Innovate Ohio, and our goal is to make Ohio the most innovative entrepreneurial state in the Midwest, so this has innovation. It also has education and job opportunities that are about the future. And thirdly, it's about a sustainable supply chain. Supply chain sustainability is more and more important in economic development conversations in Ohio these days, and this project has all 3 elements of that together. The $50 million private investment is a big deal because it's an investment in a physical facility and in technology that is going to be here that will help serve as not only a place where innovation occurs, it will draw a spotlight to Ohio, will draw a spotlight to Columbus.
The Rumpke facility will be on Joyce Avenue near Northeast Columbus. The project is expected to take at least 2 years, with an opening date set for 2024. Today is officially Cincinnati Bengals Day in Ohio. In just a matter of hours, the Bengals will take on the Los Angeles Rams in the Super Bowl. I asked Congresswoman Joyce Beatty who she thinks will win. It was an easy answer.
Go Bengals all the way. I am so excited. I watched all of the games. They were nail biters. And here we are actually in the Super Bowl. What a stage to be on for our Ohio team. So I'm just hoping everyone is out there saying, "Hooray," and go for the Bengals.
Adam King and Dave Holmes are in LA right now. They are resting up to cover the big game tonight, so be sure to watch 10 TV at 11 for a full report from California. And in the meantime, we thank you all for being here with us today. Take care.